Okay. Welcome back for the first time in 4 years. I just randomly decided to bring this back for this. It's Nick Lenz's movie review. It's episode 155. First one I've done since December of 2021. Why haven't I done one? I didn't have a big desire, but I want to talk about this one because I'm here discussing Fantastic Four First Steps. Yep. Brand new movie released last weekend. Yep. I didn't see it last weekend mainly because Comic-Con. So, here's the thing with this movie. And it took me over 3 hours to watch this movie. And it was not... And the thing is, it was because the movie's length. The movie was barely 2 hours. Here's the problem. It kind of rained, and twice the movie broke down. Yes, it broke down. There was a couple times in the movie that they had no audio, and one time they had to reset the whole movie, just replay what we just saw, which I found to be so annoying. And also got to the point where we had people just walking out of the movie theater. And it was not the movie being bad. It's not the context movie, it's the theater. Well, and they also just, do credit, possibly a refund. Refund, probably they can do that, but they don't do credit. But I stuck around. I didn't finally finish one. The movie was supposed to start at 4:15. It was supposed to finish up by around 6. The movie itself did not finish up until almost 7:30. And yeah, so that's kind of the bad stuff. So before this movie came out, well, the cast basically was revealed, where the criticism I heard about it is they thought Vanessa Kirby looked 40, despite the fact she's in her late 30s. Pedro Pascal, people suffering from fatigue from seeing his face too much. Johnny Storm is described being too old to be Johnny Storm. He looks like a 50-year-old Johnny Storm, while Reed Richards also looks 50 as well. Despite the fact that, well, the actor who plays Johnny Storm is just 40. Yeah, he's actually a little older than the actress, but he's his sister. But nothing about Ben Grimm. Nope, I heard nothing negative about Ben Grimm. I'm like, okay, interesting. And of course, also, the trailers were a bit misleading with this. Was that I heard someone saying that, Susan is the leader of the team. She is not. It's just how the trailers presented it. That was kind of the issue with this. And I don't blame basically the movie itself for that. I blame the trailers for that. And of course, what happens later on. So, we start out with Reed and Sue. And Sue is she's in the toilet. No, she's not doing her business. She's actually doing something else. Reed is looking for this particular ointment for his arm. And then, of course, he's looking at an area that's... And by the way, nice looking bathroom. Oh my god, this looks so nice. It's like 3-layer drawer. And then here comes Sue out of the bathroom. And it's like, I have some good news. He's like, what? She's pregnant. And he's like, we've been trying for 2 years. But she's pregnant. Good job for her. Yep. And then we cut to a really interesting scene here. This is basically present before I get to the montage. Where we have this scene in trailers where you have Ben Grimm trying the sauce with spaghetti. It's like, a little garlic to it. And of course, see Johnny Storm eating some syrup, which of course has in the back of it a Human Torch drawing. I have heard that this Human Torch drawing was actually drawn by the late Jack King Kirby, and this was actually based upon real-life cereal that was produced in the 1960s. And then, of course, Ben easily figures out that Sue was pregnant. And it's like, oh, it'll be awesome, uncles. And, of course, basically, he's like, Sue, you're going to make an awesome mom. Which, yeah. And it's like, yeah, who knows, basically, remake a good father. Now, they did not show the wedding. Apparently, they're already active. And then when they show the origin, I'm like, thank you! Why the heck basically it took 20 freaking years to get this right? Because here's the thing with the origin story. I know it's a spoiler. Okay, so they go up into space, hit the cosmic rays, and then they come back down, which they don't crash on the land for some reason. They crash in the water. And then they show, well, they don't actually show the powers mutated like they do in the comics, or hide out some base per se. And of course, we don't really see Ben finger transform into the thing. I'm like, that's interesting. This was shown in Fantastic Four 2005, but not in this movie. Nope. And here's something you might find interesting. And it took 4 attempts to finally get this part right, because for some stupid reason, and I do not know why some studios are obsessed with this idea, despite the fact this is complete, utter nonsense. In the unreleased Fantastic Four movie, in the 2005 movie, and the 2015 movie, which I never saw, but I've seen clips of it, where somehow, some way, Doctor Doom was involved with the backstory of the Fantastic Four, despite the fact that he has nothing to do with the backstory. And I keep thinking, why the heck did they keep ignoring the actual origin story? The way the movie presents it, I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you for finally getting this right. It only took 20 frickin' years to get this right. Just like the whole thing last year with Deadpool Wolverine, with Wolverine getting his Wolverine costume. And I love the joke from Deadpool. It's like, really? It only took 20 years to get this right. And it was a suit, which I thought was awesome. So, of course, they have the costumes, which look really cool in the movie. Ben Grimm is dressed basically like someone in the 60s would definitely dress. There's lots of Easter eggs in this movie related to Jack the King Kirby and Stanley. Heck, there's even actual, let's just say, stand-ins for them in the movie where Jack Kirby is actually drawing the pages from, well, Fantastic Four number 48, because the movie's elucidation of that particular story, and a little bit the first couple of years, because we're going to get the powers, and then we have a scene that recreates the opening the cover for Fantastic Four number 1, except there's one small problem. Mostly here's the thing, unless you read the comics, you probably wouldn't know this. In the original first issue, the Fantastic Four never got their costumes. Nope, we didn't see the costumes until issue 3 of the series. And yes, they fought Giganto. We fought, of course, the Mole Man. The Mole Man's played by Paul Walterhausen, which I've seen this man wrestle. He's a chubby actor, but yeah, I've seen him basically jump off a ladder and basically put wrestling Brian, I think it was Brett Ryan Gosling or BRG of the Rogue Horseman through a table while jumping off a ladder. And this is the same guy who also did not only this movie, he also did the Naked Gun movie. And here he plays the Mole Man. And also, and then we have, get this, we have also in this movie, before continuing this, we had the first ever seen on screen, because this was cut out of the 2005 movie, the first ever live action appearance of Herbie the Robot. I didn't initially know this at all. Apparently, this, of course, yes, I know about the fact this was created for the 7 TV show, but the Fantastic Four never had the robot originally. Later on, it was added, but it was probably one of the earliest instances where a TV show influenced the comic book from Marvel Comics. Yes. So, and you kind of see the actual comic book base one, the one in the movie is a little different, where Rat did with the Mole Man, they did with the Mad Thinker, And of course, basically, like, and then we have Reed basically punching a super ape, which I actually heard that there was actually a deleted scene where we had Red Ghost was going to make his live action debut in this movie. Where, get this, and this has been confirmed, Red Ghost was going to be played by John Malkovich. I'm like, that's interesting. And they cut out the movie for time purposes for some reason. Hopefully, when the movie comes on DVD or Blu-ray, they put that scene on the disc, because I would like to see it. And afterwards, make them anything Babu. So basically, the police keep an eye on 47 groups, and they reference these villains: the Pup Master. Of course, they might think obviously mentioned movie 2. You don't see him. Diablo, the Wizard. I'm like, wow, we actually have Fantastic Four villains who are not Doctor Doom. I'm like, thank you. I'm like, it doesn't always have to be Doctor Doom, which thank God the movie realized that, because I think a lot of people get fatigued like, oh, Doctor Doom, Doctor Doom, Doctor Doom. I mean, of the 3 movies releases for this one, it always features Doctor Doom as mostly put the main villain, or in the case of Rise of the Silver, as a supporting villain. Yeah, I'm like, thank you. Of course, basically this montage of Reed basically made advancements in science, where the Federation has basically took over the UN. Sue has negotiated with all these countries to disarm their armies for some reason. Somehow Latveria is part of it too, despite the fact we don't see Doctor Doom until pretty much the end of the movie. They don't even want to say it's Doctor Doom, but clearly it is. So, yeah, Babe Ruth in the world. And then, the sky becomes ready. Like, oh crap, is basically Marvel doing Crash Infinite? No, that's not it. The Silver Surfer showed up. You're thinking, cool, Norrin Rad's here, except it's not Norrin Rad. And I heard this got some flack too. Silver Surfer's a girl. And a lot of people were questioning, like, what, did they do a sex change for Norrin Rad? Oh no. No. That's not the case. And I read who this is, I'm like, oh, thank you. So what's really in the movie, this actually is Norrin Rad's girlfriend, Shia LaBeouf, his longtime love interest. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I like the fact that it was different. I mean, some people wish probably it was Norrin Rad. And so then, like, oh yeah, we herald the coming of Galactus, which of course basically Silver Surfer did, right? Silver Surfer as well, and of course the Silver Star comic book. So also there's sort of this minor subplot where Ben Grimm is seeing this teacher named Rachel, which I have heard she's sort of a stand-in for Alicia Masters. I do not know why they decided to include this. Also, I did hear something quite interesting about Ben and Reed, where these two previously had a romantic relationship. That was rumored, but in the movie there was no reference to it at all. The fact these two had a romantic relationship, it's just that they were childhood friends. Simple as that. I'm like, yeah, that turned out to be a lie. The whole thing of the romance, like a potential romance between Reed and Ben, was nothing more than a big fat lie. Because if I did reference it, people would mention it. So then you have Johnny Storm chase after Silver Surfer. I was thinking, like, wow, yeah, this actually did happen in the comics, where Johnny Storm basically took on Silver Surfer and chased her to space. She says something to him, and then later on, of course, Reed's like, oh yeah, we're going to guarantee you, we're going to protect you. And then he goes on a spaceship, the Excelsior, which is named after one of Stanley's, one of his most famous catchphrases, Excelsior. And they have the ship off the coast of New York City. Interesting they have this, given the fact that this would be quite dangerous to do, but here's how they get away with it. So the ship is different from normal rockets they would have at this point, because rockets are basically like a pen. They're basically like shaped straight up, and they have like side boosters to boost them up in the air. This one's different, where like it's sort of like the shuttlecraft, except it's more like a futuristic shuttlecraft with boosters, and there's a side rocket too. But like I this metal stuff. Apparently, this is all built by robots. I'm like, that's interesting. So then, of course, when they have the launch happen, they actually have the smoke go into the Hudson River. I'm like, that's interesting. And apparently this was teased for a while that, oh, he had to go to space. And of course they had these signals. The signal stuff with Johnny, that actually comes to play later on in the movie. And of course, Reed, of course, preparing for his baby's birth. And of course, they see the baby, and I heard this is a nod to 2001 with the Sue showing the baby from the womb. Go invisible for the womb, which I thought was really interesting. Let's see. Oh yeah, also the feature nation, their chief is actually a black woman. I'm like, okay. But since it's alternating 60s, I guess that means no racism. I'm like, wow, what an interesting idea. Depicting the 1960s with no racism. Because that has been a popular thing for Hollywood movies to love to do. To where, if a movie's set in the 60s, let's have the white people be racist to black people. And be sort of derogative-ish. Though in the case of, like, there was a space movie where this was kind of there, but I should point out, though, it was not heavy on it. As some movies tend to love doing this. They love the racist card. This movie, nope. The whole thing, I do like the fact it's different. And, well, yes, also we do have it head by a woman. Which, this has also been a critique for modern movies where it's like, oh, the girl boss. Like, oh, like the woman's being in charge. It's like, the problem is not the fact it's a woman, and I do agree with this criticism about this. It's not the woman, it's the writing. That's the fault here with that. But this movie's not much issue with that. So, then they launch, and they do like, and I saw this, I'm like, wait, did they rip off Star Wars with this? Because there's a thing in space they go to. I mean, there's no satellites in Wilbur, which good the fact it's all 1960 because they remember like, yeah, they had no satellites. They had like maybe like one or two, not like a bunch we have like nowadays. And they go to faster light speed, which I saw this, I'm like, yeah, this is basically take on the glider stuff, the propulsion stuff they had for hyperspace from that we see in Attack of the Clones. So then they arrive at a planet where we have Galactus consuming it. And then we see his spaceship. And I'm like, oh crap, is it going to be a cloud again? Well, I can't really answer that question. But this is a very interesting looking ship where it's a circular tube. I'm like, that's interesting. I mean, there was a couple thoughts I had in mind that was similar to this. One was the Destroyer from the original series. And the other was there was actually a Borg ship I remember basically kind of looked like this. From one of the movies. I think it was one of the movies or show, I think it was. It looked like this. And Silver Surfer kind of drags him inside. Of course, Sue makes the thing invisible briefly. Of course, Sue's going to space pregnant, which normally would be dangerous, but in the case of her, it's perfectly fine. And they have them let inside the Galactus ship, which this is confirmed to be Telos 2, which is Galactus spaceship. This is interesting, though, because normally put, even in the cartoons, Galactus' spaceship has always been depicted as a giant cube. Now, this, of course, I already knew. The fact that Unicron from Transformers is basically based on Galactus. So, and they walk the hallway and, of course, make a joke about that the boar is attached to the woman. Because Johnny kept flirting with the female Silver Surfer. And then we finally meet Galactus. And I see the scene here. Now, I knew for a fact, basically, the Galactus basically was like the same, like, and I saw this look, I'm like, oh my gosh, we actually depicting the actual Galactus, not a freaking purple cloud. And another instance of, thank you, Marvel, for getting something right that Fox failed to do in this movie. Like, this is the third time, basically, that Marvel has done something better than Fox. First was the origin story, the other was not involving Doc Doom in the very first movie, and third, depicting Galactus as he actually looks. Though it's not the same color scheme from the comics, which don't mind it at all, at least it looks like him. Also, for some weird reason, I get the fact, yes, it is on a giant chair, which that's a bit different than normally how he is. Because he's always pictured standing. This is the first instance of him sitting that I remember. Also, he's got tubes on his back. I'm like, that's different. And when the ship was scanned with the Fantastic Four, they centered on, well, the baby, which they confirmed was a boy. And apparently, Galactus wants the baby. Now, I didn't exactly remember this at all, but apparently this is based upon Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four with this plot idea, where you have well, Franklin. This is confirmed Franklin Richards here, where he becomes Galactus. So not only take inspiration from Stanley Jack Kirby, but also Jonathan Hickman. I'm like, that's interesting, because at least it's something that's more than like 4 or 5 years old, basically. At least this is from over a decade ago. I'm like, okay, cool. I like that. They, of course, say no, and of course they have to fight their way out of there. Of course, Silver gets knocked out her board into lava. She's fine. Of course, they get on the ship, and they basically chase her to a black hole, which, from what I heard, this actually was not the first time black hole was picked in the MCU, but the first time was actually Loki, except it was 2 black holes. And some people, I did hear this from heavy spoilers, where some people were suffering a bit of deja vu with this, because we just saw a black hole depicted in the Superman movie, and now we have it here for reasons per se. Silver Surfer gets tossed in there, and then they use the slingshot back to Earth. She's there for a month. They get back, and of course she nearly gets tortured over a baby. They get home, and of course, basically, like, they failed, but they couldn't exactly beat him because they actually wanted the baby. Of course, also, she went to birth on the way back to Earth, which birthing is perfectly fine. Didn't turn into a monster, which good enough for that. And a lot of people, like, just have a thing like F the kids. I'm like, seriously? Yeah, and then, of course, basically because of this, the reputation of Fantastic Four goes down the tubes, and everyone starts hating them. So then we have, and nobody brought this up at all. Nobody ever did. In the 2 Easter egg stuff, nobody brought up this little scene here with this, where after all the protest stuff and the hate of Fantastic Four, Sue comes out with the baby, introduced him as Franklin, named after, of course, his grandpa and, of course, his godfather. She brings up what happened when she was a child, where basically her family was separated because of a car crash. This, believe it or not, is actually from an actual comic book. I don't know which one it was, but it's part of her backstory. They do mention Franklin Storm here, but they don't make an appearance. They do mention the fact his wife died, Sue and Johnny's mom, where the whole thing, like, separate family, she's experienced that, which I'm actually quite surprised that Emergency Awesome Air Heavily Spoilers never brought up this scene, because this is from the comics. So they have the words, people start seeing more positively, and of course they figure out a way to beat him by first thinking of the idea of teleporting the Earth to someplace else. Then that gets voided thanks to Surface Patrol the bridge, except for the one in Central Park, which of course where Johnny chased her down, where they, thanks to the broadcast stuff, revealed that she's actually from Zen La, and her real name is Charlotte. I was like, how do you know the name? And I'm hearing the actress saying, I'm like, did we really need to rip off Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice with that? Because no one brought up either that particular line is taken from that movie. And the person who said it was Batman. Yep, frickin' Batman. Where where Superman was saying Martha, and he's like, how do you know that name? And Lois shows up and says it's his mom's name. Oh, good day. Yeah, and I've also there seen when they bring us up when they're fighting Silver Surfer, a little chart that's a nod to Star Wars, which of course basically Marvel always love to get away with it because they own Star Wars. So then she leaves. Then of course, like, okay, so we need to get Galactus to the portal itself. So let's bring Galactus to Earth. And here's another moment. Basically, you don't talk not too much detail about this. So he arrives on the planet. He actually comes down himself and lands in the water. Well, he walks in the water, and he turns, sees such liberty, does nothing to it, and then he proceeds to walk on the shore. Of course, smashing buildings. But before this, they have formed a peace treaty with Subterranea, formed by Man. Of course, they evacuated the city, which good on them for doing that, because they mentioned, oh yeah, there are actually families here and people would die, but luckily they're all evacuated. So then you see a moment where you have Galactus rip some trees up his sniff because apparently he's not sent them over like a long time. They do make a reference when he first talking to the Fantastic Four about his past as a scientist, which I like the fact they referenced that. Good enough for doing that. So then he of course proceeds to walk to where presumably Franklin is, and then he's blinded by the Human Torch, and a baby's taken to the back building. Of course, it doesn't work. Of course, he ends up basically breaking the window, getting Franklin out of the little car seat he's in, and then proceeds to get forced to the portal area by Sue, who for some reason identifies as Susan Storm, despite the fact that she's married to Reed. She should be Susan Richards. Not really sure why they did that for, and of course they kind of using the visible power to force him over there, and of course you have Ben knocking over a building, Johnny basically blasting him to, well, getting to the portal, Reed of course getting stretched by him, which is a little funny moment. And eventually he gets put in the portal, but the thing is a countdown. It's like he's in the portal for roughly 26 seconds. He comes back out, and Johnny's like, tell Franklin basically his Uncle Johnny loves him. He's about to go in, and then he's shoved away by Silver Surfer, who she proceeds to push Galactus to his portal, and he's shoved like a million miles away. Like, okay. And then afterwards, we go to this version of the Ed Sullivan show, because I heard this thing is based on it, where they have it on this platform, which is a nod to the Beatles, and they're about to, and then they're called away because their thing is happening. There's a little moment where they're trying to put the cars in the car. They get in the Fantastic car, which of course they use in the movie, which I do like this car. Yes, it's not based upon any of the models from the comics I know, but I do love the design of this car. It looks fantastic. And then we have post-credit scene. By the way, also, some people question, like, what's going to go on with Talos 2? Galactus is not there. It's presumed Reed has been basically researching the damn thing. So, we jump ahead 4 years. By the way, also, Sue apparently dies, but she apparently comes back thanks to Franklin's cosmic power. For some reason. Don't know the reason for it. And then we jump ahead 4 years later. We have where Sue is reading Franklin a book, steps away for a minute to get another book he likes. She walks back, of course, as a nod to X-Men with the Origin Species, and she comes back and he's a man in a cloak with his mask off, and her son touched the man's face. And this is Doctor Doom, which I've heard is actually Robert Downey Jr. revealed this actually at last year's San Diego Comic-Con. I saw the video for it. And according to John Campea, this is actually the first time that I feel like this got a big pop in years for Hall H. And that was a post-credit scene. They also joke about clobbering time. By the way, how they also get the bridges. They had to basically conserve power to build these up, and then eventually they were almost all were destroyed. So, yeah, great movie. I still need to see Thunderbolt. That's the only movie this year I have not seen. It's one of the handful movies I've not seen yet from the MCU. So these movies I have not seen. I have seen Black Widow. So these movies I have not seen. I have not seen Eternals. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness. And Thunderbolts. 4 movies. It's not bad. Of course, some might be thinking, like, did I see Brave New World? I did. I like some stuff from it, I don't like everything of it. And, of course, Jay Heaton and I did do a spoiler-free review for it, where the thing is, the actor is not to blame for what happened with this movie, with Brave New World. It's more like the movie was reshot twice, and there was alleged, like, oh, maybe the budget increased, and the director said no. And the stuff for that one stuff we shot wasn't special effects. It's more like in-person shots. And people were not fans of the leader's look. And like, oh, it was basically supposed to be like, it's basically all but name of Incredible Hulk 2 because they really want to do it, but because of the confusing rights with the character Hulk, thanks to Universal, despite the fact that I've heard that, and this is more confusing, I heard this from Joe Quesada, that he says, oh, Marvel owns all the rights for Hulk. It's like the only right they actually do not have is distribution, because Universal has the right to say no to it. And I'm like, that contradicts what people were saying about it. It was similar with the case of Namor, where Marvel owns complete rights to it, and they decided to make him an Aztec. For some stupid reason. Actually, it was no Aztec. It was a Mayan. I hated the look for Namor. I didn't like the piercings for him. I like the ears, but I hated the piercings that he had to have. Where they made him Mayan because, get this, the alleged reason why they made him Mayan, despite the fact he's Atlantean, is because Kevin Feige assumes people are so stupid not to grab their phones and look at this up on Google. I'm like, Namor the Submariner, King of Atlantis. Instead, they made him a Mayan and he's immortal for some reason. And his sister is blue, despite the fact she's not as big as blue. And Atuma was his general, despite the fact these two hate each other. And I also did like the scene, and I try to point this out though, where you had Atuma versus 2 lesbians. And I'm like, why couldn't you have Mach Boo fight him? Though, of course, one of the movie is not based upon one from the comics, it's mostly original. And I don't know why. It was kind of weird. And yes, the Midnight Angels are from the comics. They're from Tai Nadakota's run. He was the, if I remember correctly, I think he was like the 3rd to most recent writer of the Black Panther ongoing. That is where that one's from. Shara being Black Panther, that was Holland who did that. Well, but the whole thing, Black Panther dying, that was made a movie because of Chadwick Boseman's death. Yeah, and I'm giving some thoughts on movies I've seen, because the last episode we were talking about on my own channel was Shang-Chi. You're like, okay. I did enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That was a lot of fun. I liked the fucking finally feature High Evolutionary. Yes, it's not exactly one I picked from the comics, but it's fine. I actually really enjoy that one. Yes, it's probably gonna be James Gunn's last MC movie because he's over at DC doing Superman. This could be. They find it kind of weird last year. I'm gonna end it right here soon. Okay, so they find it weird last year that last year was the first time since 2012 we only had one MC movie come out last year, just one. And of course, the movie was Deadpool Wolverine. That was it. Yeah, last year, first time in 12 years that's happened. I'm like, damn, that is something. And this year we've had roughly 3 released: Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and now this one. Now, I haven't seen Thunderbolts, so no opinion on that one. So I would say the movies I've seen, I'd say so far that Fantastic Four is the best one, and Brave New World is below that. That's how I rate it. But yeah, that's pretty much it particular video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe to notifications. I will see you all later. Okay? Let's go. Bye.